Hey, everybody, and welcome to And Action Filmmaking Podcast. I'm Tommy DiNucci. As always, I'm here with Mikey Messier, and we are going to deliver you one of the finest episodes on color grading in the history of podcasting. That's right, we're talking all about color grading. If you're not familiar with what color grading is basically like putting a giant Instagram filter on your movie. It's a crucial part of the post-production process. If you nail it, it's a game changer. If you fuck it up, it'll ruin your entire movie. But before we get into that, Mike, how the hell are you?
Tommy, I'm doing pretty good. I can say that we're probably both in better physical condition than Aaron Rodgers right now. Unfortunately, the Jets' new quarterback suffered a possible career ender. And as football fans and proud Americans, I just thought we should send our condolences to him.
That was tough to watch, man. You know, I tuned into the game a little bit late, and I see a different quarterback wearing a Jets uniform under center, and I say, "Oh no!" And then I saw the replay, and I just saw that. You know, again, it's so funny how it works with sports, and it's like this with all sports, and it's like this sometimes just in natural walking around getting hurt, but sometimes the simplest maneuvers lead to the most crucial injuries. I mean, that didn't look like much just looking at that play. It kind of just looked like Aaron Rodgers fell over and tumbled a little bit, but something got really severely damaged in his Achilles tendon. And we're sending our thoughts and prayers to Aaron Rodgers because, I mean, listen, I'm not a big Jets fan, but nobody wants to see a guy's big quarterback go down 4 snaps into the game week 1. That's just awful. So our thoughts are with the Jets fans and they're with Aaron Rodgers, and we hope he can bounce back. But I don't know, Mike. I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, but something tells me that an Achilles tendon issue is probably, if not a full season ender, at least like you're talking, half the season at least.
I got to think so. And I mean, I think the only equivalent is when a baseball player, a pitcher, has that Tommy John surgery. But I think there's probably a better chance that a pitcher that gets Tommy John surgery is probably better off at it. And no offense to Aaron, but how old is he? 36 or 38?
No, he's older than that, buddy. I think he turns 40 this year, or if he isn't already 40. And, listen, there's no question. This isn't age shaming, but like when you hit your late 30s, early 40s, your body's going to start to break down a little bit. When you're playing in the National Football League, we're not talking about beach football. We're not talking about throwing the pigskin around in the backyard. We're talking about, playing up against some of the finest athletes on the planet. So, that said, we just wanted to get that out of the way and say a little something about Aaron Rodgers to start the show off. But things are going well, Mike. I'm excited that football's back. I'm excited to have a little something extra to watch. It's nice that you got your whole Sunday kind of mapped out. If you don't have plans, you can kind of just put that game, put one game on, and then one game just leads into the next game, into the next game. And there's this sort of like hypnotic sense that you can get on a Sunday where you just get your snacks. You're laying down, you're relaxed. It's an American feeling, and I like it.
Tommy, I actually enjoy Thursday and Sunday and Monday night football probably more than the Sunday afternoon games. I kind of like to go out and enjoy the sunshine on a Sunday, but I really do enjoy those Thursday night and Monday night games. And it's nice to see that Monday Night Football is back on ABC. I think for several years you had to have ESPN to see Monday Night Football, and last night, at least last night, it was on ESPN. I don't know if that's for the whole season or not.
You mean ABC, right?
ABC, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's fun to watch. I agree, Mike. You can't get enough football. And even recently, I've been so kind of starved for football. I've been watching a lot of college football. I've been watching, games on Saturdays. I've been loving to see Deion Sanders primetime coaching at Colorado. So, this tis the fucking season, baby. I'm excited. But let's talk a little bit about, actually, before we talk about color grading, I want to thank everybody. This YouTube channel, which you're watching this very program on, has now officially gone over 2,000 subs. We got 2,000 subscribers. Woo! Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Good job,
really appreciate that. Mike, I appreciate your help working with me on And Action, getting a nice, consistent subscribership to watch this show every week. Thank you to all the And Action people who listen to this and watch this. It really means a lot to us. If you haven't already, sometimes I do this. I forget, like I'll watch a program on YouTube and I'll just forget to subscribe. So if you're like me and you forget to subscribe sometimes, go on down and click that subscribe button for us. we ain't quitting, guys. This is episode 61, and I feel like we've really only talked about probably half of my career. And the nice thing about the show is I'm going to keep moving. Mike's going to keep moving, and as we continue to work on projects and shows and movies and scripts, we can come on here and talk about it. So, as they say in business, the topics are truly evergreen, and we're just going to keep firing them out at you. So we're excited about that. And Mike, I think it's time for some color grading. Mike, when you think of color grading, oh, go ahead. Did you have a little something to say?
I had a totally non sequitur topic. Maybe we'll save that till the end. So stay tuned if you want to hear a non sequitur topic.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little non sequitur later, guys. Color grading is very important. So we're certainly not going to. We don't want to just gloss over this. So we'll get into it. Kim Kaling's here. What's up, Kim? Good to see you. And she says, I'm actually really interested in learning about color grading. Yeah, it's an incredible process. It's funny. I've watched a lot of movies, and I've worked on a lot of movies, and really what it comes down to is I've been in positions where I wasn't too thrilled with the look of the film. I wasn't sure how I felt about my movie, and then what ended up happening was all of a sudden we go through the colorization process and we're color grading, and the movie starts to come to life, and it really starts to just pop. The word, we hear that word a lot, when talking about colors, pop, like,
Right.
"Ooh, that color red really pops," or, "Oh, I like your scarf, it really pops." Well, the idea behind color grading is making everything pop, every color really defined and specific. But it's so much more than that. Really, what it comes down to, Mike, is I'd say the first thing to think about or talk about is, and this is usually decided by the director, and of course the colorist helps. But if you're going out and you're making a film, and listen, this goes for music videos, this goes for documentaries, this is not limited just to feature film. Anytime you're shooting anything, you're going to want to color grade it. The director should have a palette, a tone of colors already in mind when they go out to shoot the movie. And that'll be kind of facilitated by the lighting. The gaffer will come in and the DP will come in, and they'll help you build that sort of look. Again, some filmmakers, especially early in the game, you might be a little haphazard and you might not really have thought that deep into the game. And I know that I've made some of those mistakes early on where, I might have one scene with warm colors and then the next scene there's cooler colors. And it just like, I don't know what you're
Hodgepodge.
doing here. Yeah, it's a hodgepodge. Because again, sometimes us young filmmakers, when we're starting out, you say to yourself, well, that looks cool. Let's do that. And yeah, sometimes things might look cool in that moment. But the idea about a film is it's almost like the songs on an album. They're supposed to flow together and kind of roll into the next and roll into the next and tell a little story with the colors and with the tone and the mood. So sometimes, even though something might look really cool, you got to ask yourself, well, does this fit my palette that I've kind of created? And if you go on Instagram, there's a lot of really cool Instagram pages dedicated to, they'll take a director and they'll be like, Martin Scorsese in Goodfellas, and then you'll see the color palette and you'll see like the 5 or 6 colors that are very heavy in the film, or Steven Spielberg and E.T., and you'll see all those colors. And it's really cool to see when you really break it down. It's one of those things that when Mike, we talk about this, I wouldn't say every episode, but almost every time we talk about a detail-oriented aspect of film, it's those things that the audience doesn't realize that they're enjoying, but they're enjoying it without knowing it. And if you take it away, they'll suddenly know something's different about it. And following your color pattern and staying true to a color scheme throughout the film, that's very important. And when you go to color grade, that's the first thing you're going to want to talk about with the colorist. What kind of mood are we trying to paint with this picture?
Yeah, you asked me what my first thoughts when I hear the term color grading. I always go back to the 1999 film Payback. It's an action film with Mel Gibson, Maria Bello, and many other great actors, and Lucy Liu's in it. But I remember seeing that movie, Tommy, and it has like almost this steel blue or midnight blue effect, and I remember that critics and fans of the film were talking about it. It was something that people were talking about in a mainstream way. Maybe that was because the film had an extreme case of color grading, where it wasn't trying to be subtle at all. It was really saying this is payback, and this is going to be a midnight blue color graded presentation, if as it were. So that's what I always think about when I go back to color grading, that extreme thing. I can say that I once shot some footage on I think it's called a Blackmagic Cinema camera, and those cameras, the footage doesn't look particularly great until you color grade with it. Like the at least at the time, this was about 10 years ago, the footage kind of comes out dull, and but when you color grade it, it looks great. And I remember the DP at the time even told me as much, like, hey, our raw footage is not going to look anywhere near as good as once it's been fully accomplished in post. So
Yeah, we
it's
don't want to
interesting.
we don't want to go too deep into the weeds and the technical side of things, but yeah, Mike basically just mentioned a key term you'll hear a lot, which is raw footage, which is basically, that's the footage directly out of the camera. It hasn't been touched, it hasn't been tweaked. And you can all relate to this because how many times have we taken a photo on our phone and it looks okay, and we're like, yeah, it's an okay photo. And then you start playing with the filters and you start messing with the contrast, you start jacking up the vibrance, softening up the image a little bit, and suddenly you say, wow, that's a really good picture. And when you first took it, it was just an okay picture. And it really makes a difference sometimes when you're going to post up a pic and you throw a nice filter on it. That's really what we're doing here with color grading. You're throwing that Instagram filter on there, but there's so much more to it because what you're also doing is servicing your narrative by making sure that color scheme that you want is just right. So I think that that's the big thing to remember. It's not just the filter. It's about telling your story with the colors that you have. If you have a really intense scene, you might want something vibrant and red. If you have a really moody, sad scene, you want something blue and cool, purples, colors like that. So it's really interesting, colors, and this is something that you can really study. There are many books out there on this. Colors obviously all affect human beings differently. But for the most part, we're all going to get the same feelings when we see colors. Certain colors mean different things. And if you can tap into that and you can get a little what we'll call color philosophy behind making these decisions, again, like movies are all about messing with people's minds a little bit, whether they know it or not. So you can kind of manipulate their minds by servicing their imaginations with the right color scheme.
I remember seeing something on TV once about, I think it was like juvenile detention centers are oftentimes painted with a color scheme in mind of like a peaceful yellow or a light green or even a pink. And the idea is that these particular colors are, the idea anyway, is that they tend to calm the juvenile delinquents or the young people that are serving time, I should say, in a juvenile facility like that. Because if they had really, extreme colors like a hard blue or a red, it might intoxicate the environment of violence and mouthing off. But the soothing colors, at least in theory, are supposed to calm people down. So it's interesting how colors in general can affect people's mood.
Absolutely. That's a good point. You don't want to paint a jail cell red, that's for sure. That's probably going to make everyone go insane and cause riots. So yeah, there's a lot of psychology goes into choosing the right color scheme. So real quick, again, we're not going to get too into this kind of super technical stuff, but the number one color grading program out there, the kind of industry standard, is a program called DaVinci Resolve. And DaVinci is a really great program. It allows you to get very specific and really key in on things. And what people don't realize is a great colorist can truly isolate certain parts of the frame. Like, for example, let's say we weren't happy with the color blue that I have on my shirt. A great colorist would be able to just isolate this blue, not my skin tone, not the backdrop, not the microphone. They'd be able to just isolate this one color here and really jack it up and manipulate it to kind of how they want it and go in one direction or another. So that's why a program like DaVinci Resolve is really great, because you can get super specific. You're not just going to be, again, I hate to keep using this reference, but when you're on Instagram and you're just putting a filter on your pic, you can't key in on certain areas that you want to just, target. And when you're working on a film, you can really do that. And guys, it's amazing too. And you know, we've done this a lot in the editing room, but in the color process, you can actually get rid of blemishes sometimes. You know, if somebody might have a zit, you can kind of like, you know, soften that a little bit. There's a lot of, we'll call it cosmetic color grading that you can do to kind of make a person's skin tone look better. You know, like I didn't sleep much last night, so I got some, you know, some bags under the eyes. Good colorist will go in and lighten that up, and you won't have those kind of that, you know, darkness, those dark circles they can kind of get rid of. So there's a lot of amazing shit that they can do to kind of go in and, I guess you could say, throw a band-aid on some of the old production mishaps that just naturally happen.
Yeah, I recently worked on something, Tommy, where my editor went through and systematically removed, you could call them either birthmarks or beauty marks. I think when Cindy Crawford had one on her face, it was called a beauty mark. So we'll call it a beauty mark. But we went through and took those out. We had two on our actresses, you know, upper neck type of thing. And we went through and took them all out. And it really wasn't because they were unbecoming of her. They were fine, but they were messing with other aspects of our editing. So there's a lot that can be done in post-production, and it's always evolving, which is exciting too, you know?
Yeah, and you're not always going to be trying to enhance the look of just an actor or a human being. Also, there's some times where, you know, I've been in situations where, okay, we're filming a scene and there's windows and we don't want to see what we see outside of the window for whatever reason. Maybe there's a light stand out there. Maybe there's crew people out there, whatever. Maybe we're just not happy with the way it looks out there. Well, you can what's called blow out that window, and you can jack it up so that there's just a bunch of bright light kind of beaming out of that window, and we don't see anything out of it now. So color grading can really be the, I guess you could say, almost like the eraser or the, you know, a layer of protection for the filmmaker to kind of like go in and get any of them unsightly blemishes out of there. And it's really amazing what can be done. And really it comes down to your imagination, because you can almost do anything. There's almost anything you can manipulate. You just got to think about it and figure it out. So it's really fun to work with. You know, for example, we were just colorizing my web series, The Florist, which will hopefully be coming out in November. And, you know, the lighting was great in the movie. I'm not trying to knock the lighting, but there was one particular scene where, like, I could have used an eye light. There just wasn't enough light in the eyes. And again, it was like kind of dark. This colorist, Sam Eilertson, who's super talented. I've worked with him for many years now. And he's really just, over the last couple, 2-3 years, really honed in his ability, his coloring ability, color grading ability, I should say. He was able to literally just like paint a circle, a digital circle around my eyes, and manipulate just that one portion of my face, brighten it up, and track it so that, like, when the image moves and when I'm moving around, that same lighting is consistent throughout. So there's just some amazing shit that you can do, and you really don't know what you can do until you get in there and start trying to mess around with it. Let's check in with some of our folks here. Ariana, what's up, Ariana? Nice to see you today.
To answer her upcoming question, the answer is no. This is just something I saw on television that I remembered, but thanks for asking, Ariana.
Yeah, Mike, what are you doing in that? Oh, this was back when you were a counselor for the youth.
Yeah.
Scott, what's up, brother? Another one of my suggested topics. Of course, man. I mean, like, we appreciate it. It's a great topic.
We're going to have to start giving this guy credit.
That goes out to all of our And Action friends out there. If you've got ideas of things that you want to hear us chat about, hey, man, we're coming at you every week, so we could use the help with the topics once in a while. We appreciate that. But Scott, you keep them great topics coming. We're gonna bang them out. So yeah, color grading. It's one of those things where a lot of people will claim to be a colorist, but few people are truly the artist that can really do it and know the software and know how to manipulate the images and kind of hide some of the less than great with some colorization tricks.
Tommy, I've got
go ahead, Mike.
I've got a question for you, because you're talking about the Sam working on your eyes in that recent production. Where does the line cross between color grading and FX? And what I mean by that is I recently saw that Indiana Jones recent film, the one that came out this past summer, and it's not just his eyes, but his entire face is being, 20 or 30 years is being taken off of his face.
Yeah, That's a different ball game. That's visual effects.
That's more of an FX thing.
Yeah, that's good old fashioned CGI. I would say, think of the colorist more like the post production makeup artist. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about is more like the post production plastic surgeon. Like the full blown.
Right.
We're gonna rip your face off and put a different one on it. But you certainly can do a lot. I'd say that visual effects and color grading often work in harmony a lot because there's a lot of situations where, for example, a muzzle flash on a gun, that's going to be CGI if you're not using real guns. And, you know, when the colorist goes in and does their thing, they're going to colorize that visual effect so that it looks seamless. A lot of times when you see like even things like you're going to fire a lightning bolt or something like that, when the visual effects artist first implements the visual effect into the cut, it might look a little disassociated from the footage. But once the colorist goes in and makes it all the same color, for lack of a better phrasing, suddenly your visual effect looks less fake, for lack of a better phrasing. Like it looks like it belongs there. So that's kind of the difference with that whole deal.
You were getting to a point, and we kind of went on to this other point. So let's get back to the point you were about to make.
Yeah. So basically, I think that we pretty much covered like what color grading is, and why you do it. Obviously we're trying to tell a story. We're obviously trying to convey a certain mood. Let's talk about some of the things that can happen when you don't do it right. What can happen when you have a bad situation with color grading. So I'm not going to say the movie because it'll give it away, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But one time I went into a post-production editing situation where I walk into the editor's facility and I think that I'm walking into a color grading situation, and we're going to have a session. And the colorist was doing all of what they thought color grading right in Premiere, which is an editing software. And yes, in Premiere you can tweak some colors and you can do a couple moderate things, but it's almost like, I'll use a football reference. It's the difference between like a Pop Warner playbook. Okay, we're going to run up the middle, we're going to run to the side, and we're going to throw one pass. Or an NFL playbook, which has 1,000 different plays. It's just you can do so much more in DaVinci. So right off the bat, I knew that doesn't work for me, brother. Like this ain't gonna work out. Like I just knew. Again, I'm not a colorist, but I knew that if we're not even using the industry standard software, like how is this ever gonna look good? And the guy showed me a couple things, and I remember I immediately got on the phone and I called my producer. And I don't do this much, guys. Anyone who works with me, they'll tell you like I don't bitch a lot. I always try to work with what I'm given. But this was one situation where I just had to call my producer and say, listen, I really like this guy as a person, but the reality is this is not a colorist. This person is going to, I might have even said, like, this could ruin our movie. This is going to really set us back. Like, they won't be able to do what we need to do. And my producer totally supported me and was, happy to hear the report. And the truth is, we didn't have the color session. We waited it was like I did 20, 30 minutes and then I left. And the lesson there, and this is like, the difference there is this was me at, in my, whatever it was, probably mid 30s. And me in my late 20s, when I first started doing this, I probably would have sat through the session and I probably would have gritted and bared it, and I probably would have tried the best, and it wouldn't have been good, and it would have been a reflection on me because it's my movie. At the end of the day, when people look at the movie, they're not going to say, oh, that colorist was shit. They're going to say, no, the director sucked. What the fuck were they thinking? So in my younger days, in my younger and vulnerable days, as they say, I would have just kind of went with it. And on this particular film, I learned, you know what? No. We're gonna draw a line in the sand right here. Like we're not doing this. I'm out of here. We gotta get it. We gotta get the right guy for the job. So I guess the reason why I'm telling this story is that's how important the color grading of your film is. It's live or die, because at the end of the day, like even if someone's half paying attention to a movie, what they see is the visual. The images are what they're going to judge you on. And the other reason why color grading is so important is when they advertise and market your movie, they're going to be a lot of times you don't get the benefit of a full video. You'll just get one image. You'll get like a frame of the movie, and every frame of that movie should look like a painting. And if you color grade it right, you're going to look at that image and you're going to say, "Oh, that's an arresting image. I want to see more." But if it's color graded flat and it's just not popping, you're going to just pass right by that. You're going to scroll on to the next post, and that'll be that.
And let me offer a few thoughts on that story, which I think is a great story, Tommy. First of all, I would just remind the audience that a lot of times when Tommy directs these films, sometimes you get the option of picking your team, right, with editors and color gradists, and sometimes you don't. You know, if you're put in a situation where you're kind of the director for hire from an outside producer, you kind of have to play ball with the teammates you're assigned. The second part of that I would jump into, Tommy, is when you, as soon as you started talking about the different programs, the DaVinci and Premiere, it reminded me of what we said on one of our screenwriting episodes. Like, as a screenwriter, if I see somebody else's script that's clearly written on Celtics, or Microsoft Word would be the worst, or some type of other type of open office document, or something that's not Final Draft, I can see that immediately. Just by the title page, I can tell that they didn't want to pay the $100 or $200 for Final Draft. They figured it didn't matter anyway, but it does matter. And it reminds me of our friend Joe Jaffo Carrieri, who unfortunately passed away quite some time ago. But Joe used to make the comparison between that Final Draft thing and I think it's called Pro Tools in the music industry for music production. And he said that if people try to get by with some other non-Pro Tools program, it's obvious that they really aren't taking these things very seriously. They don't know what they're doing. And anyone who kind of knows what they're doing, going into work with them is going to be less than satisfied. And the term that Joe used at the time was industry standard. So there's some things that are just industry standard, and sometimes people have a rebellious attitude that they don't want to pay the money for the program or whatever the industry standard tool is. But a lot of times you're just hurting yourself, because one consumer can't really change an entire industry standard for any type of program or equipment or whatever. So I got out of that story quite a bit there, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, you're going to want to show up with the good stuff, when it comes to equipment and things like that. A lot of times it does make a difference. But yeah, let's dive into some of these questions here, or some of these comments. Ariana says, let's see, I'm all backed up. Here we go. Seems like color is like props. When it's good, you don't notice. When it's bad, it ruins everything. And man, let me tell you, it really can ruin everything. You know what it is? It's almost like, here's the sad thing about miscolor grading a film. There's nothing worse than wasted potential, and sometimes you see a movie come out and it's just not up to snuff, and you say to yourself, man, if they had just colorized that right, what could have been? That really could have been something special. And again, it's one of those things where it's sad because it's a reflection on the filmmaker, and sometimes it's not their fault. And that happens a lot. That's not color grading. Right now it's happening on the show because the landscapers are back. You might hear them mowing the lawn in the background there. But it's one of those things where you could be the greatest filmmaker in the world, but if they hand you a crummy, and by they I mean your producers, if they hand you a crummy sound design person, or if they hand you a shitty colorist or whatever, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And you could be Martin Scorsese, you could be Steven Spielberg, but what am I going to do with this with this lack of professionalism at some key positions? So you do your best, and here are some tips on how to, if you're working with a great colorist or not the best colorist, what I like to do is come up with comps, comparisons. Watch some movies that you want your movie to look like, and take those images. And they don't have to be the whole video. They could literally just be screenshots. Hell, I've done this before. You can literally be watching the movie and take a picture on your phone and put together a little lookbook for your colorist and say, hey, these are the kind of vibes I'm thinking for this movie. And sometimes it's hard to articulate color, right? It's really hard to articulate it sometimes and say, I want it to be a little warmer, a little less vibrant, a little cool. We all know those terms, but to really get in there and pinpoint it, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if you show them a picture of exactly what you want, it's kind of hard to fuck that up. No matter, they could be speaking a different language, and if you show them the picture and point to it and say, do this, they're going to probably do it right. So, don't just go in there with a bunch of bullshit and philosophy when you meet with your colorist. Go in there with some actual comps and say, let's try to do something like this.
Very interesting.
Real quick, Scott says, being a professional graphic designer myself, color grading is definitely the pinnacle. I'm sure it's even more challenging in film. It can make or break the final product. It really can, man. And it's certainly, it's broken a couple of my projects, my final products. And I'm happy to say that I've had some really good luck with colorists in the last little bit. But also shout out to Scott. Scott made a really cool poster of Mercedes Monet. A little bit of a kind of like just like a hero shot. It's badass. I posted it on my story. So thanks for putting that together, Scott. Really good looking work there. I can see you know what you're doing with that. But yeah, I think that, it comes down to just such a crucial part of the process that we don't want to fuck up.
Hey, Tommy, I saw something you posted that your most recent film with Mercedes Monet hit the top 10. And was it on Amazon Prime, or what was that exactly?
Yeah, I was thrilled to find it out, man. I mean, listen, it's kind of funny. First off, I feel like an idiot because I was told by a few fans of the movie that, like, hey, it was third last week. And I was like, oh,
you
man.
missed the big three. You missed posting about when it was third.
Yeah, I could have posted top 3. That would have been badass.
That would have been amazing, yeah.
Instead, I'm posting 8, which is all right. I mean, 8 is the number of abundance, so they say. But yeah, it was cool to see, man. Look, success is fleeting in this business. You get these rare little glimpses and glimmers of it. And when it comes, you almost don't believe it's true. Sometimes it feels like kind of surreal. I remember just, a couple days ago, I don't check this shit out.
This is the Collective, by the way. You didn't mention that this is the Collective film.
Yeah, we're talking about the Collective, which has Mercedes Monet in it. And it's funny, guys, like, I'm sure some people do, and I don't knock them if they do, but I don't sit there every week and say, like, how many people have seen my movie? What ranking is it? I'm not huge into that stuff. Obviously, I think it's cool if I find out about it, but I'm not going out and looking for it every day. I really do have one of these mentalities, and this is both a good thing and a bad thing, and this is probably why I'm going to die at a young age. But basically, as soon as I make a movie, I promote it, it's done, and I'm on to the next movie, and I jump into it hard. And those movie memories just become a distant thing. And that's why I like to come on this show and talk about it, because there are so many times it's like in one ear, out the other. So it was really nice to get a message from a couple of fans of the movie. And they basically said, hey, your movie's number 8 this week on Amazon Prime, streaming worldwide. This is the worldwide streams out of every movie on the planet. And I was like, no, it's not. And I'm like looking it up on my phone, and I see it. And it was just like, it was a really cool moment for me, man. Like, not to kind of get too corny with it, but just to kind of like look down and like see my movie in that top 10 list up against, some massive films and some really big budgets with some huge movie stars. It felt really great. So I was excited to put that out there. I got a lot of really great feedback on the post. So thanks for everybody, all the well wishes. It was really great to see. Like Scott said, he says we did our best to stream the Collective as much as possible. And you can see, man, all the fans of Mercedes Monet came out. The Don Johnson fans, Tyrese, Ruby Rose. The movie's got a lot of star power, and I think that the ranking there is kind of if you read the tea leaves, it shows that it does have some power. So I'm excited about that, and man, I hope we get to make a Collective 2. I would love to do a sequel to that movie.
Well, let me ask you this, Tommy. I was going to ask you about Vault, but since we're talking about the Collective, was there, or what was the color grading musings or approach or style or vibe? What applies with color grading to the Collective?
In the Collective, we really wanted to make it this very kind of dark, almost, you hear this term a lot, but graphic novel kind of a look, where it looks like kind of one of the darker comic books that you'd read. So you'll notice very contrasty. We really pushed the blacks in the movie, like, in any color black is like pitch black and dark, and it's dingy in moments. But also when we see the Lucas character, there's a kind of a glimmer of hope and there's some brightness to his character, and we were okay with doing, having a lot of kind of warmer tones when Lucas is on screen. But really, we tried to keep it consistent with that. It's again, we're dealing with some pretty dark elements in the movie, so we wanted to kind of carry that out. But the colorization process was a dream on that movie, man. It went by so fast. I remember kind of sending some photographs of some things I wanted, and literally giving like a handful of notes on the first pass, and then it was done. And you know why? That's what happens like when you work with like really talented people and like really great professionals that just do this shit all the time. This isn't a hobby for them. This is what they do for a living. It's a different story, man. And then they can actually suggest to you things that kind of blow your mind. I love working with people that have way more experience than me.
Sure.
When you're running, you want to run with people that are faster than you. If you're lifting weights, you want to lift weights with people that are stronger than you. You always want to be striving to get better at what you do. And when you work with people that kind of aren't quite, when you work with people that are at your level or below, you're always going to be tugging a big, sack uphill. And nobody wants to tug their sack uphill. It's very
Right.
unsightly. Whereas when you're working with people that have all that experience, they're telling you, oh no, I think you should try this. And you see it and you're like, whoa, that is fucking awesome. I love that idea. So ideas are great. It's fun to throw around ideas. And why wouldn't you want to throw them around with people that have a ton of experience?
Hey
Scott
Tommy, I
says,
wanted to give a shout out to who worked with you on that one in the coloring. Was it Gustavo? Was that the Gustavo Bernard Moncheno? He's listed in the editorial department for the
yeah,
color.
there was a whole post team on that movie. So I worked with him. I worked with a couple different people on that one. So shout out to that whole group of guys that came together to make the colorist pop. Scott says, even the darker scenes in the collective weren't too dark and perfectly done. Love the vibes. Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate that, man. I love that movie and love that little world we created, and hope we get back into it soon.
Let me ask you this, Tommy: the cinematography by Alonzo Holmes. Is there often a nice relationship between the cinematographer and the color grader? I mean, are those two positions that should
Yeah, that's
help
a
each
great
other?
point. Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. The cinematographer is definitely tightly connected to the look, because remember earlier in the show we talked about how the cinematographer will create the lighting scheme and the tone with the gaffer and the director. So they're gonna want to make sure that look stays consistent in the color process, because again, like, you can really go in a way different direction with colorization, and a DP might see it and say, wow, like, this isn't how we lit any of this stuff. This isn't what we were trying to do. So yeah, there was definitely a big there's always a tandem between the colorist and the DP, and a lot of times they'll kind of share notes before the process even begins. Um, as we wind the show down, I want to kind of talk about one of my favorite, not one of my favorite by far, color grading experiences. So the movie Vault was an exciting film for me. My company Woodhaven Media actually handled the post on that movie, the post production. We did the edit, and we basically had a budget that we had to stay within. It was a pretty good budget, and we knew right away, and by we I mean myself and my partner in the company at the time was Sam Eilertson, who we mentioned earlier, colorist extraordinaire. And we knew that color was going to be key. We knew color was going to be the difference maker, the game changer, whatever cliche you want to call it. So we found a very amazing company out of New York, and we went down to New York City, and we sat down and went into the studio, and it was a fucking game changer. This colorist that we worked with just was able to do so many amazing things. He was a bit of a wizard, and again, you know, had a good 10 years on Sam and I, and had a lot of experience, and was really guiding us through the process. And what's cool about it is, you're in this studio in New York. It's this really cool design. Like, the entire room is like white, and then there's the screen, and then you have like these like cool like space age looking couches. And what I didn't realize, but now I know, when you go to like a top notch colorist in the city, like, there's snacks, there's beverages, there's coffees. They have like basically a waitress practically that comes in and is like can I get you anything? What can we get for you? Here are some menus. Would you like us to pick you up anything special? They really like, it's the Hollywood treatment, and it was really cool to experience that. And naturally, we're talking about you know, I'm literally talking about paying, you know, I don't want to tell tales outside of school, but enough to buy a car to go there for a couple days. You know, we're talking that kind of money. So, as they say, you better offer me a goddamn coffee. But you know, it's very. I guess why I love that experience so much is because to me, Vault is probably the best looking aesthetically movie that I've ever made. And again, that's preference. A lot of that's because I love pop culture. I love the '70s. I love that we really leaned into that kind of almost like a film grain in that film. Um, but it was just really cool to see a top-notch color house in action. You know, this is all they do. It's all we do is colorize. You know, and they were just unbelievable.
And what color palette do you think, or do you know, came from Vault, or what was the palette for Vault as far as the colors, Tommy?
Well, we wanted to really like lean towards that film stock. You know, we wanted this movie to look like it was shot on, you know, 16 millimeter film or 35 millimeter film. So, you know, that kind of film stock usually has a little bit more of like a warm quality to it. And we tried to lean into that. And you can almost see, I don't want to say that you can see like a film on the film, but there's almost a texture to the film itself. It's thick.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool look to it. So yeah, I think that was the big part of it. You know, just like leaning into that. We wanted it to look like a movie that came out in the mid '70s. You know, that was kind of the idea.
That sounds like it. I think it worked. Yeah, I mean that mid '70s to late '70s is probably the best time for American films, I would say, overall.
Not many people will argue that. You know, I was talking with the guys on my other show, Rushmore. If you haven't checked out Rushmore, go ahead and subscribe to that. That's my new ranking show. We rank everything pop culture from movies to music, you name it. And we were just talking about how, man, mid to late '70s, like just talking like, you know, Star Wars, Rocky, Alien, Taxi Driver, just so many,
Godfather
yeah, Godfather, so
1
many
and 2.
so many filmmakers just like that we now think of as potential goats. You could put them on your Rushmore of greatest filmmakers. They all kind of like came together and well, I shouldn't say came together, but they all kind of started doing their thing right around that same time. So yeah, '70s cinema, man. You could do a whole podcast just on 1970s cinema. Um, so yeah, that was my experience with color grading, and with I will tell you one little funny last anecdote. You know, we're ordering all this food and we're all excited, and you know, we're in the big New York City color grading studio, and yeah, we ordered lunch. The fuck, they offered us lunch, you know. And then I remember like a week or two later, this company run out of my house, you know, and mail comes, Sam's in there, and I open the mail and it's a bill, and they charged us additional money for the food we ordered those couple days, and I couldn't fucking believe it. I remember getting that bill and just being like, "Are you fucking kidding me? We spent enough money to buy a fucking used Lexus to color grade this film, and you're gonna try and get me for the $100 for a couple days of lunch?"
And I'm sure that they didn't mention that when they were taking your order. They made it seem like it was complimentary.
Right. Yeah, they made it seem like, well, you spent all this money, we'll buy you a goddamn sandwich. But that wasn't the case. I was pretty shocked. I'd still go back there, but it was just kind of funny, you know.
And the prices weren't Denny's or even Subway sandwich prices. They were Hollywood prices, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're talking about like an upscale kind of sandwich place in the city. I bet you it was probably 25 bucks a sandwich kind of deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bill. We went there, like I said, we had 2 sessions. We ate lunch twice. It was $100. So you know, nice of them to take that extra 100. And action fans, am I a cheapskate in thinking that they probably should have covered the lunch for the amount of money we spent there?
Hooray for Hollywood. Tommy, I don't know if this is a good time to segue into my non sequitur because it.
Yeah, I think we're going to wind things down. I think it's time to segue. Segue away, bud.
I saw a controversial story yesterday. You know, we both are experiencing this SAG-AFTRA strike, in addition to which I believe the Writers Guild have been on strike for about a month before the Screen Actors and After strike. But apparently, Drew Barrymore, who I've always enjoyed, going back to E.T. and Firestarter and all the Drew Barrymore, all the Adam Sandler romantic comedies, and her talk show, which I've actually watched, and I'm not even kidding. I've sat there and watched Drew Barrymore because I think she's pretty friendly.
You don't have to be ashamed of that, buddy.
I'm not ashamed. I mean, I have it in my wallet that I'm a Drew Barrymore talk show fan, but apparently the controversy is she's kind of claiming the exception card to this strike, even though her show usually enrolls Writers Guild writers. So she typically, when she's doing her monologue or when I guess they do, some comedic skits and a lot of interviews, but she actually normally has a team of Writers Guild writers on her show. But she is now going back to work without her writers. And she is claiming that her show gives like nourishment to the soul. And that's like she's basically putting herself and her show in this position of, we're an essential worker basically for television, that, the Drew Barrymore show comforts people that otherwise would be out in the streets running around like lunatics. And I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I do, because I like Drew and I don't think she's trying to do anything malicious. But does her going back to work with a studio audience and guests of some sort, does that undermine and diminish what people are trying to accomplish with this SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild strike? And I still have mixed feelings about it, but I do have kind of guttural feelings. But what do you think of this one, Tommy?
That's a tough one, Mike. I got to be honest with you, and I hope I'm not speaking too freely. I hope there's no Screen Actors Guild assassins in the trees, and maybe a wayward shot might come through my window after I say this. But I think a lot of people on both sides of the field, both crew people and talent, are getting a little tired of not making money and not working. And I think that there's a lot of people that are kind of getting stressed out. So I'm not saying Drew Barrymore is broke and she needs the money. It's not that. But that was my kind of side argument. I am starting to see, if I may say so, a lot of the people that were kind of cheerleading the strike are now probably starting to say, like, well, hey, wait a minute. This was only supposed to be a few weeks. Like, right. I still haven't drawn a dime, in the last couple months. What's going on? Now, to answer your question about, do I think Drew Barrymore is providing a comfort food video for people?
That's what she thinks. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Unfortunately, I do think it's unfair for her to say that, because maybe I'm comforted by horror movies. Maybe I'm comforted by action movies. Maybe I'm comforted by drama. You can't go saying my show will comfort everyone. That's right. Not really fair to say that. I mean, yeah, but I get her point. I guess her point is kind of like, look, this is a lighthearted show. We're not picking signs. We're not drawing lines in the sand. We're here to provide a little something for the people that are, looking for a smile on their face during the day. But I don't know. It's a tough one, Mike. I don't really have much of an opinion on that. My opinion is this. The strike really needs to end soon, because there are a lot of people that are not necessarily, and I'm not anyone's accountant, so I don't know this for a fact. But, the big actors and the big writers and the big directors, the people that are used to making 6-7 figures a project, they're going to be okay. If they sit out for a year, if they sit on the bench for a little while, financially, their lives aren't going to end. They may have to sell one of their houses. They may have to sell one of their boats, but they're going to be okay. Whereas the person who's a grip and they're, setting up lights every day, or the person who's a day player actor and, does a lot of extra work. Mike, I know people who make a living off of extra work. They literally do this every day. Well, those people don't have 6-7 figures in the bank. So those are the people that are really getting the biggest, kick in the boxer shorts right now. The people, kind of below that line of fame and fortune. And unfortunately, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, but the reality is what I meant to say. The reality is there are a lot more people in the movie business that you never even heard of than there are that you have heard of. So like you don't realize that this strike is affecting thousands and thousands of people. and not only that, but there is a trickle down effect, man. Like, think about it. The strike is affecting. All right, so I'm in Rhode Island right now, and Rhode Island's a very small state, and we have a great tax incentive program here, and we've gotten a lot of really big films to come to Rhode Island. I don't need to name them all, but there's been some the new Hocus Pocus sequel just was shot there. I'm talking huge movies, Disney movies, everything. And when those movies come to town, the local restaurants are sparked up with business. The hotels are booming. The infrastructure of the city itself, or I should say the business infrastructure, is extremely stimulated. And there's another, domino effect of this strike. Well, there's no movies being shot in Rhode Island right now. So the hotels are struggling a little bit. The restaurants are struggling a little bit. We don't have a random influx of 1,000 people that just showed up to town ready to buy shit. So the strike is really affecting not only people in the business, but in a weird way, it's affecting people outside of the business too, and they don't even know it.
Well, buddy, I just think of this is why I have mixed feelings about it, because I think she's definitely helping her grips, the grips for her show, and the lighting people on her show are being helped, and yes, she's being helped, but there are people that are protesting outside of her office, and I think of like friends of mine, probably friends of yours in New England. Our friend Kim Kaling has gone to some of these, rallies to show her support. Andrea Lyman up in New England, Marilyn Bush is doing these nice graphics with the SAG-AFTRA strike. I think of people that I know personally, a lot of them in New England, and a lot of them that are just really dedicated people, happy to be involved, and they're literally spending their free time in hot summer days in black SAG-AFTRA t-shirts. I mentioned that because I hate wearing black in the summer because I get all hot.
Yeah, I noticed that too, man. Every time I see a post of these protesters this summer, I see those black t-shirts, and I think they must be so fucking hot. They're just like, the sun is just like, got to be just beaming on those shirts.
Yeah, and but I see them making that sacrifice, and so many other people we could name, but I feel like compare, the Andreas and the Kims and the Marilyns to the Drew, and Drew Barrymore, who comes from a third generation Hollywood family. That's why I kind of turn on her a little bit, or my feelings go mixed in the negative direction, because overall I think she's great. She's had a great career. I respect her work. But in this situation, I think she might be a little misguided, and like I said, but maybe there's more to it. But I'd love to. I don't know if she's addressed this issue on her show or not, but I can see and people are very vengeful, Tommy. You know that. I mean, people who might have liked her work before may hold this against her, and probably will. But it's just one of these things where, when we did our episode talking about this strike, I think I predicted December, and as far as I think it's going to go all the way to December, and so I hope it ends sooner. But it just seems like now, as you said, we're getting to the nitty-gritty of it.
I respect your pick, but it ain't going to end in December. This thing's going into next year. The movie business notoriously shuts down around literally the month of December is a dead month in Hollywood, and even most of January. So I think that, let's say this. If a decision isn't made by November 1st, this thing's not ending until March of 2024. I think you're looking at, somewhere in Q1 of 2024 and not the beginning of Q1. So, we're in for the long haul on this. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone's, mentally doing well. These kind of things can be kind of depressing, and they can take their toll on you. But, part of getting knocked down is getting back up. And I think everybody will in due time. And I think it's also, the measure of a person sometimes is how you react to this kind of, adversity. And I think that a lot of people are shifting. I've been making a lot of different decisions in terms of like my show Rushmore, and really trying to push that out. We've got a Patreon channel now. So people are, finding alternate revenue streams is always a fun thing. And, we're going to survive. We'll get through it. So guys, we really appreciate you checking this show out. Next week, we're going to be talking about the legendary Don Johnson. I've made 2 movies with Don. So we've got a lot in the bank now, and I'm excited to talk all about him. Everybody knows him from Miami Vice, but he's been in so much more than that. We're going to kind of do a little deep dive on my time with Don Johnson. if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and go check out Rushmore. Subscribe to that as well. And if you want some bonus content, we've got a great Patreon page. Just punch in Rushmore on Patreon. It'll come on up, and you can see what all the fun's about. Real quick, let's see here. Both Scott and Ariana agree that they should have paid for my lunch. We appreciate that. And like Ariana said, they should have at least said, like, hey, this isn't on the house, but we can get you some food.
Were you
thank
supposed
Scott.
to?
Appreciate that, brother.
Were you supposed to include a tip on the bill that you got in the mail?
I would imagine they added 20%.
They probably added 33%. That's Hollywood shuffle, buddy. Well,
all right,
I'm just
guys.
going to sit here and read my book, Tommy. I'm going to read Fight or Play Basketball today because there's no acting work. But another good episode, pal. Good to see you.
Check out a book. Check out a Rushmore episode, and we'll catch you next Tuesday talking Donnie Johnson.